you're more than welcome to the Coffee at 11 show, brought to you this lovely Monday morning by wigwam.ie SME Peer Support. Delighted to have you all here, and in particular delighted to have my special guest, the very young, ridiculously young Chris Kelly. Chris, you're very welcome. Please say hi and show us your coffee mug.
Thank you very much. Not a very fancy mug, it's standard Dunn's mug today, but thank you very much all the same.
I love a standard Dunn's one today, Tracworx one into the future. Ladies and gentlemen, just before we bring the man himself in, let me introduce you a little bit to this young man, Chris Kelly. Business name is Tracworx. Chris is the ridiculously young CEO of Same. And Tracworx offers cloud-hosted RTLS, no idea what that means, Chris will explain, I'm sure, RTLS tracking solutions to healthcare organisations over their existing Wi-Fi network to manage and track patient flow and assets in real time, improving patient journeys and asset utilisation, giving caregivers back time to do what they do best. Love that, Chris. Established in 2016, this young man already has 12 employees. He's a Limerick man, proud from Ballybrown originally, founder of Tracworx, previously known as Pinpoint Innovations, passionate about solving some of the biggest problems in healthcare. I love this world vision. And he believes that technology has a critical role to play if we are to get efficiency right in hospitals. And then something nobody knows about Chris, he says, I've been to the A&E department 15 times. That's one for every year or 18 months that you've been around. 15 times for different injuries. It's probably why you ended up in healthcare. Well, you know what, Chris? Healthcare is delighted that you have ended up in healthcare. And of course, this isn't even your first business. So we're going to go there in a little while. Before we go there, Chris, delighted. Thanks very much for taking the time out this morning to join us on the Coffee Loud show. Before we go there, will you bring us up to those early years, Ballybrown, bring us up through, the family, schooling, etc., to where we are today, please.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I was, as I said, in the A&E for most of my childhood, everything from dislocated shoulders, toes, arms, the whole lot, mostly through sports and stupidity and the other side of it. So everything from jumping off the bed to trying to run down the stairs past to feed the goldfish to hurling matches and you name it, I've probably done it. And I suppose, yeah, I would have spent a good bit of time in it from a young age. It would have been all about sports. Never really thought about anything like that, anything else apart from that. I went to Crescent College over beside for those not aware, it's just up beside the Crescent Shopping Centre for secondary school. And had a really great teacher in secondary school who taught me how to program outside of school, which was fantastic. It was, I think, an opportunity that not many kids get. And she really took a couple of us under her wing and trained us up, in kind of an after-school club and how to write software, how to build products, and everything from little gadgets that were using sensors and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of how I ended up in business, actually, weirdly enough, is that it started by just building products that I thought were cool to start off with, and then trying to find applications for those products.
Great. That was a very positive history, but thank you for that. I was scribbling notes there. So sports was your thing, and you were running up and down stairs and injuring yourself and doing so while you were trying to keep yourself goal fit. What do you mean by goal fit, and what was your sport?
I kind of did everything. I mean, hurling, soccer, rugby, Gaelic football, rowing, running. I mean, I've tried everything. I think at some points I did kayaking, surfing. I'd say every sport I've probably tried it at some point. I like being active. I think it's very important. Even still, I actually see Karl's after joining. Even going to their monthly run is a great event. Now I haven't actually been there in a long while just because work has been in the way, but I think being active is very important. I think I lost track of it for a few years and only came back into there in the last few years, and I've noticed how important it was. But yeah, a bit of everything, you name it. As I said, I probably played it at some point.
You're an interesting young man, an enigma, dare I say it, because typically, maybe this is unfair to say, but my understanding is that you're either a sports guy or you're a techie guy, and never the twain shall meet. But you seem to blend both.
I don't know about that. I've very much moved away, I think, from the tech. Well, I still be heavily involved with my engineering teams and in terms of developing products, and have a really keen interest in it. But I think the two go hand in hand. It's the same principles apply. It's software is competitive, despite what people think. You want to write your code as best as you can, or you want to build the best product, and business is the same. I think there's a competitive edge that comes out in sport that you'll find that translates across into business as well. And whether that's in technology and competing in a competition like CanSat or Coder Dojo or something like that, you want to win all those things. So I think it's the same ethic, or the same kind of work ethic comes into it, and you want to be the best at something, and that's, I think, they kind of translate across for me anyways, at least.
So Chris Kelly is competitive?
Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, I have stories about being competitive down to the years. I once ran into a wall to win a race by accident and broke one wrist and sprained the other. It was one of my many A&E visits, but I'm competitive beyond belief. It's I can lose. I hate losing. It's not it's not a fun thing.
I love the honesty. I hate losing. Wow. Let's not get on the wrong side of Chris Kelly. You have this angelic demeanour. It's belies it. Fabulous. So tell us about. First of all, you said in school, I'm delighted that you met that teacher. It's really interesting. I think, tiny little connections, man on the train moments in our lives make huge differences over time. And so that teacher obviously stepped up and offered something to you and to others. And yet we're talking to you and we're not talking to the others. That's really interesting. They all had the same opportunity. They all looked at it at the same time, but with different perspectives. It reminds me of Bill Gates's younger years. He happened to find himself in a school where programming, those early days, happened to be taught or made available, and he put it to good use. So Chris Kelly, Bill Gates in the one sentence. Let's see what the next 30 years brings.
I don't know about that now. That's a strong comparison, to say the least. But yeah, I think, to be fair to people in the group that we had, some of them have gone on to do incredible things as well. That one of the guys is a lead engineer in Tracworx, a company up in Dublin, and another guy is on track to be a barrister. And I think the group of us that were there we all still very close friends, but kept in touch and stuff. And but we're all very, very focused and have our own things we're focused on. I think that was one thing she made us realise, is that nothing gets done without focus. And that was a really important moment for me, I think, in as a learning experience to have that. I was very lucky. Yeah,
fantastic. Well, you also made use of the lucky opportunity. So hats off to you in the scheme of things. It's not all about just what she did for you. It's what you then did for yourself. So great stuff. When you and I met some years back, which sounds ridiculous given you're so young, we did meet several years ago. You had just come off your first business, apparent success, and then demise. Do you want to talk about that for a quick sec, please?
Absolutely. So when I actually had started building my first company when I was in secondary school, so I would have been about 18, I suppose, when I started it, and going on 19, I suppose. I was working on it the whole way through. When I was doing my leaving cert, it was a camera system for drones that would analyse fields for farmers and could tell them how their crops were performing throughout the year. So the whole idea was to try and optimise the fertilising schedules, and to try and understand it. What time of the year should you fertilise? What weather conditions should you fertilise under? Do you actually even need to fertilise? Are your crops growing okay? And perhaps you should spread the fertiliser in the field beside it. Actually managed to get the whole thing working, which was really cool. And I circulated initially within the software sphere, because that was all I knew. I didn't know anything about business. I'd never intended to make it a business even at that point. And got a lot of support from companies that helped me to say, oh, you should start this as a business. And I started it off. It was great. Went out. I was like, this will be an apparent success now, because I built a great product and nothing else matters. It's just going to all work out. And I think I saw a video on LinkedIn yesterday, which was very appropriate. The market hit us like a ton of bricks. And I think we realized very quickly that you can build the best product in the world, but if there isn't a market there for it, that you're wasting your time. And that was a really key lesson, and was one of the first things that we took into our next business. And it was actually with Fiona Nolan. They joined me towards the kind of maybe a month or two into it. And I'm still working with them now in this company, and really great guys to be working with. I'm blessed in that. But we really learned from that one that if there's no market, it's not worth doing, because you'll never succeed unless the market is there and willing to pay for it, for that matter, as well.
Really well said, really well said. I wrote down you saw a gap in the market, but what you didn't consider at the time was, is there a market in the gap? And that phrase was given to me by actually the very first guy who came on the Coffee at 11 show, Alan Andrews of the Old Barracks Coffee Roastery. And that's his thing, you know, there's always a gap in the market. We all see them. Right? The real question is there a market in the gap? You found out to your cost that there wasn't, except it wasn't really to your cost. I mean, it gave you huge experience and huge, you know, world view. You went to Silicon Valley, if I'm not mistaken, with that. Is that right?
Yeah, I just after we closed, Tolliv was the name of the company, just after we closed Tolliv, I was in college at the time and I met an entrepreneur called Steve Walker. So he runs a IT consultancy company in San Francisco. Hugely successful guy and does a lot of philanthropic work with entrepreneurs, particularly young entrepreneurs, and visits Ireland once a year and does interviews for people who are trying to build a business or trying to take it to the next level, and often takes them over to the States and covers the entire cost of the trip. He's an amazing guy, to be fair to him. So I actually met him when I was in college. I was actually trying to dodge exams to go off to do a business trip, long story, but and as part of getting off my exams, the head of the department said I had to meet this American guy that was coming over and wanted to hear about businesses in the college. So I had to give a talk to him, and actually took a liking to what we were doing and actually brought me over to the States for a month and put me up in his house and everything. It was incredible and gave me training for a whole month on how to start a business, how to do accounts, something I'd never even thought of. It was, and some of the things you wouldn't even, some things I hadn't even considered, and got us in front of some incredible people. Like Peter Mogg was, I think, one of the meetings I remember distinctly. He was the CEO of Novartis in, I think, Germany. So he was a huge pharmaceutical guy and had just IPO'd his own company called CareDX after. And I remember walking in as, you know, I was only, I think, 19 at the time, walking into his office and getting that opportunity to pitch in front of him and to have him, you know, having ran a multi-billion-dollar company and then started his own company and IPO'd in the stock market. I think the initial IPO was 100 million valuation. I think he's gone on to hit the $1 billion mark as well. So to get inside his boardroom and to have, I had 2 hours with him to actually, for him to tear my business to shreds. And I walked out demoralized. There's no other words for it. It was terrible. But you came out of it with a list of things that you needed to fix and a list of areas that the business needed to improve on, and I think I took it away as like, right, well, I have to go and fix those now. So it was, yeah, one of the best experiences of my life, to be fair.
That's quite incredible, and I'd like to, Sarah Ward started the Bula bus there, so I just want to invite her to give you the Bula bus. That's just wonderful stuff. I mean, who gets to do that in the scheme of things, really and truly? And we spoke before on the Coffee at 11 show about the X Factor, and you have the X Factor, Chriskelly, whatever that's about. By the way, I love the fact that you referenced Fionn and Owen, because I know those guys as well. Really good guys. In fact, folks, you should check out the social media stuff around Chris. Eamon will be putting the URLs and whatnot in, so you can check it out and follow this young man. But you've got this thing going on where you seem to always wear suits and ties. Is that fair to say?
I don't know. Not at the moment, anyways. We've gone all casual since.
No, I accept not at the moment, but you have this thing when they turn up. They're you know, there's photographs. They're in Germany. They're in Brussels. They're in such and such place. They rock up, these young fellas, right, in their shirt, their suits and ties, right. And you remind me of the young Beatles, dare I say, whenever I see the imagery, right. Something dead cool about it. But look, come here. You know, you're on a roll here. There's something about you, something about the team you've pulled around you that's got people's attention, and people are willing to back you. Which brings us to Tracworx. Where did the idea come from? So the first one didn't work. Your man gave you a list of things to fix. He said, okay, demoralized. You started working on it, right? Because you like to win. This we know, okay? And so that obviously informed the founding of Pinpoint, which has now become Tracworx. Takes to Pinpoint and the pivot, please.
Yeah, so we had went over, when I went to San Fran, I had the idea of what we wanted to do for Pinpoint. We had started having conversations with the hospital about it. So we were kind of the people that we were like, we're going to build something. So we're going to just build loads of things and we'll find something that works eventually. And that was the wrong way to approach it. But we had started building a dating app. It was something we were thinking about, we'll track our friends indoors and we'll figure that out. And it happened just to meet someone at a local maker group who worked in the hospital and said they were actually having huge challenges with recording the times patients were spending in each phase of their care. and they were doing it on paper at the time, and it was quite laboursome. It was inaccurate for obvious reasons. Simple things like clocks being different in different rooms meant that the time that was wrote down wasn't the right time, and there was a list of issues that they were having with it, and just trying to understand their efficiencies was a huge challenge, and something that they asked us if we were able to do. I remember the guy looking at the app that we had built and goes, well, I'm not sure about the dating part, but could you track patients with the same technology, and could you perhaps build something? I think that immediately we found that they were a customer that was willing to pay for a solution. I think having learned from what had happened with Olive, that was a huge validation tick for us, that we wanted to work on that. And it was one of the things actually that I spoke with Peter with when I met him, is that, you know, he had said, focus on your market, nail your customer. And a lot of the feedback was, you know, I think there's an awful lot of, especially in the startup scene, and especially in San Francisco and in Silicon Valley, there's a whole buzz about, you know, finding your mission and finding your, the big market that you're going to go after and capture. And you sometimes have to try not to get caught up in all of that, and really just nail your customer, nail your market, nail your value proposition, and all of the rest of it will figure itself out. Those kind of things can be figured out at a later date. So we then became obsessed with that, and we came back. That was our mandate. Going back from that, it was, we're going to obsess with our customer, and we're going to do a pilot with them. They're willing to pay, so we're going to do nothing but focus on that. So we built a prototype, and again, taking the lessons from it, we weren't going to spend too much time building it until we knew that it was the right product for the customer. So we slapped together a prototype with off-the-shelf components. We rapidly got it together, and we tested it with 5 patients as an initial trial, just to show that the concept could work. We followed on to that to get our first PO from the hospital to go and actually build a full system. And we knew that at that point, that was when we needed to invest in actually building a product that was at least trial ready or pilot ready for a medical environment. So that started off the process, and thankfully the pilot went really well, and we've been rolling on since there.
It's just wonderful. It's great story. Again, blew the bus there, yeah, completely. A couple of things that you said, I just want to reflect on, if I may. Did you say you met somebody in a maker group? Did you use that phrase, maker group? What's a maker group?
So it's on every Thursday night inside the Fab Lab in town. It's the Midwest Maker Group. I haven't been to it in a long while, but I would have went to it when I was in college. It's the most bizarre bunch of people you'll ever meet, and it's incredible. Like, people that are doing everything from 3D printing to laser cutting to building just sheds in their back gardens, and everyone's building something. And there's electronics people, there's people building apps, and it's just a really cool bunch of people that have no business intentions, just want to build cool things. And have done a lot of good work at the moment on, like in terms of PPE, in terms of developing new systems for it. There's been a lot of stuff come out of that group in Limerick as well, and helped with some of the COVID challenges. And that's it's a really good place to go to actually validate your idea. They'll tell you pretty quick what's possible and what's not.
Wonderful. So the Maker Group does exactly what it says in the tin. I wanted to just check that. So great stuff. The other stuff that jumped out for me, and I presume for the guests in the cafe here this morning, is you used the word, we began to obsess with our customer. So you got obsessed with the market, and you began to obsess with your customer, which gave you a laser focus. There was one gig in town, and it was what you're going after. And you basically put to one side all the other good ideas in favour of what was potentially a great idea. Other thing I've loved that you said is we threw some stuff together, tracked a handful of patients with off-the-shelf products. So you didn't spend time and money and waste energy or resources trying to create something fancy. You went and cobbled stuff together that worked to prove that the concept worked, and then once you had that up and running, you got the PO from the hospital. So great, magical. And so that first PO that came through from the hospital, you must have been delighted. What happened then?
Absolutely. So that was a great day. It was, I think, a really good point for us in terms of, and stood to us in later conversations we had with investors and so on, that became very important, that we were able to secure a customer, that we could show that there was a market for the product. And we literally embedded ourselves in the hospital right from the point that we got the PO. So I think some of the consultants would have been very annoyed at us. By the end of it, we were taking their desks left, right and centre. We were, we had all their books that you could imagine. I think we actually tried to learn about who they were too. So, we would take in several courses to understand how an operating theatre actually works. How do you schedule an operation? What's the procedures around it? And just became and I'd say they were very patient with us, to say the least. I think with the young cheeky faces, we got away with it to some extent, but the amount of questions we asked about the smallest of things, why does it happen in this room and not here, and what infections will mean that they have to be recovered in theatre, and why is that the case, and what were the pain points for them, and just really got in and understood that for them. And every time we found a problem, we'd write it down, so how are we going to position our product that it can solve that for them, and made it all about their pain points. And I think that's how the best way to go about building a product is if you can really just tailor every element of it to a pain point, and don't build anything unless it's solving a problem that's worth paying for. I think that's a very good way to think about your product, that it solves problems that are big for customers.
I was trying to write that down there. Can you say that one more time? Don't produce something unless it solves a problem that people are willing to pay for. Is that what you said, or words to that effect?
Exactly, yeah. So you can solve problems all day long, but if the problems aren't problems that people want to pay for, then it's a product. It's a product for product's sake. You're not building a product for a market at that point. I think that's a really good way to think about it, that if you can solve the problems that cause enough pain that people are willing to pay for them, that's typically the problems you should be trying to solve, I think. But just an opinion.
You know what, I think we're all looking at you here and we're thinking your opinion is hugely valid. I've referred to you as ridiculously young, and you are, but I'm delighted for you, and I'm delighted that you've taken the time to come in to the cafe today, because what you're sharing here will help a lot of people in every sense. I was just before the show, folks, I was checking with Chris. Is he actually the youngest that we've had on the show? Because some of you will have remembered Owen Sheehan. So it turns out Owen Sheehan and Chris Kelly know each other, and Chris is delighted to say that in fact he is younger than Owen Sheehan. In fact, you referred to Owen Sheehan as a bit of an elf at this stage. You must be 24.
Maybe 24 there, yeah. I'm pretty sure he is 24. I worked with it there a few weeks ago.
Sure, it's game over. It's game over at this stage if he's 24. All right, no, Owen is actually on his way to TV land as we speak. So great stuff. So tell us about Tracworx. Tell us about what the product actually does, please.
Yeah, so as I said in the introduction, we build real-time location services. So that's what RTLS stands for. And so that's the core of what we do. It's providing it over the existing infrastructure. So a lot of the products, when we started off speaking to the hospital, I probably should have explained that the actual, I suppose the unique selling point of the system is that we don't require you to install any infrastructure. So up until the point where we built our product to track patients, there was two options. You either recorded it on paper, or you asked your staff to enter it into a computer, or if you had a budget of high six figures to sometimes even seven figures, you install what's known as RFID, which is radio frequency identification, Bluetooth low energy systems, and so on. A list of different types of systems that all fundamentally do the same thing. So you install little tracking beacons either over the door or around your building, and then when people walk under the beacons, it scans the device on the wrist. And the challenge with this is that, as you can imagine, first off is cost. The second challenge is that, imagine installing something like that within a medical environment. It becomes really challenging to get the approvals to do that. If you've got lead-lined walls inside in theatres, you can't drill into those without having them sealed up properly. Even just in terms of infection control, getting them all certified that they're all okay to do it. It was a huge challenge for the hospital, something that they wanted to do, but both from a cost and I would say just hassle perspective, it was prohibitive. So what we built for them was a system that worked over the existing Wi-Fi. So we take the signal strengths in every room and can tell exactly which room that you're in based off of the Wi-Fi signature that we get in every room, and works off a little wearable device that the patient wears around the room. So it means the hospital doesn't have to install anything inside the hospital, and they don't have that huge setup charge they have to pay. And then from that, then we can establish back all of the value from the data. So everything like just fundamentally keeping a record of how long procedures took, then feeding that data into scheduling, into planning, and into performance analytics as well. And then from small things like finding a patient in real time, finding a piece of equipment in real time. And those are critical points for a hospital. So 1/8 of a nurse's time is spent looking for missing patients and equipment, which is a huge inefficiency that people are unaware of. So it's a huge challenge for them. About 16% of operating theatre time every day will go unused because of a missing patient or a missing piece of equipment as well. So when you consider that an operating theatre costs €1,500 an hour to run, an average hospital could have anywhere between 8 and sometimes even 60 theatres in the UK. you're starting to get into serious numbers every day to run those complexes when each of them is costing 1,500 an hour. So it's really valuable data for them to make sure that in real time they know that there's a patient in every theatre, that they're not missing pieces of equipment and so on. And that's the fundamental value proposition of what the system does.
It's absolutely fascinating. Yeah, indeed. Lisa started the bus this time. It's mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. I love the fact, by the way, that you looked at the challenges, you looked at drilling into lead-lined walls, etc., and realizing there was a huge extra cost associated and disruption associated. So rather than going that traditional route, you look to see, well, what can we work with? And you decide to work with the existing Wi-Fi network. It's absolutely brilliant. I struggle with the fact that nurses spend an eighth of their time looking for missing patients. That blows me away, right? Or missing bits of equipment. Have you seen my heart monitor? Right? And Chris is able to point to where it is straight away, or at least his system is. It's just wonderful. But when you get into the numbers there, Chris, because I love numbers, right? 1/8 of a nurse's time spent looking for missing patients or equipment. 16% of the theatre time is downtime because of it's inefficiencies. €1,500 per hour to run a theatre, and some hospitals, as you say, have 60 odd theatres. So that's just phenomenal stuff. So that clearly says there's a gap in the market, and it also suggests there's a market in the gap, and you've tapped into that. And is it working for you? Is Tracworx getting the traction that it needs at this time?
Absolutely. So we obviously have been slowed down a bit by COVID, that a lot of operating theatres aren't operating at the moment, which is a challenge for them. But we've an amazing team here, to be fair to them, and the team innovate. I always say that they innovate their way out of problems, which is great. So they've repositioned the devices for contact tracing now, so they're allowing hospitals to track back where patients have been. They've even enabled an incredible piece of technology on the device that allows the devices to communicate with each other, and they know how close they are to each other. So we've had endless inquiries for social distancing on that we can tell if people are not within 2 meters of each other. We can send them a notification to say you need to social distance, and there's been a huge appetite for that. So we're blessed here with the team that they think completely outside the box when it comes to these things, and have come up with solutions that we went from having 40 proposals out to different hospitals across Ireland and the UK to most of them saying it's probably going to be 6 months before we can even look at this, to rolling all of that back into a new product, and having almost back at full capacity again, and now trying to figure out supply chain for scale and how we can actually get more devices in quicker. It's incredible that if you told me this a month ago that they would have been able to achieve that, I wouldn't have believed it. But they've created a new headache for me, and I can't complain about that one, unfortunately.
That is a wonderful problem to have, young man. Wonderful. Yeah, again, there's Sir Ward. Sir Ward hasn't stopped clapping since you sat in the chair. It's great. It's wonderful. Great story. Great to hear it. Why did you change from the name Pinpoint to Tracworx? What was the significance there?
Absolutely. So it was, I suppose, fundamentally it was quite hard to distinguish Pinpoint as a brand. That was where, I think the amount of search terms was in the high 20,000, I think it's 27,000 searches or something like that, and probably has gone up since. So it just became very hard to distinguish our brand, and the advice we got from our IP lawyers or attorneys, whatever they're called, was that we needed to go with something a bit more unique. So we rebranded about a year ago to allow us to have a distinguishable brand. I think brand is really important. I think that if you can have something that distinguishes you from your competitors, and that's a very important point to do. So I'm not very good at branding, but we have a guy in the office here who's really good at it for us, which is a big help. But I definitely think it was something we needed to do, and I'm glad we did it sooner rather than later.
Just wonderful. I love that you, because I'm a fan as well of brand, systems and people. They're the three things that you need to get your head around if you're going to scale your business. And so you put so much effort into each of those. Your brand, obviously, and changing from Pinpoint to Tracworx. Really interesting dynamic, because at one level you might be wooed into the fact that since there are 20,000 searches for Pinpoint, well, somebody might say, that's great, I'll position myself. They're clearly looking for Pinpoint. But you identified that no, in fact, that could be a problem. So Tracworx was born. Delighted with that. But you also listened to advice. So going back to the guy, Peter, in Germany, he was willing to give you advice, and you were willing to take that advice, and you've continued that trend ever since. Somebody with a little more experience under their belt is saying, do you know what I think you should do? And you're willing to listen to that. and put it to use. So you're into brands, you're into systems, and clearly you're into people, and you've developed this lovely team around you with different skill sets who are on the same mission. Going back to your California days, what is your mission?
So we want to solve efficiency in healthcare. That's the big picture, and that's getting very startup now for me, and even to say that, but that is the goal, and it's something we feel very strongly about even. But I mean, we have a plan to do it though. So it's not as bad, but I think that's what we're all about here. It's about solving that challenge. I think it's so frustrating as a taxpayer, as a person, or as a brother, as a grandson, or whatever you want to call it, you know, seeing the care that people receive sometimes, and it's not down to the staff, because the staff deliver, you know, I've seen them working on the front line, especially during COVID. These people are incredible, and they work beyond all means, but the systems and processes around them and the technologies that they have are not supporting them to do their jobs to the best of their ability, and that's what we think we can provide, is to give them tools and systems that can help them to, you know, to solve simple things like, where is that person, or where is this piece of equipment? You know, their challenges, even from a communication perspective, just knowing that is, I couldn't imagine not doing my job, or how frustrating that must be to try and do my job while listening to, or while having to face that challenge of finding pieces of equipment and so on. And that's what our whole company is about solving their problems to make their job easy, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that will deliver the care. We're just giving them the tools to go and do it.
Great stuff, absolutely fantastic. Thank you for that, Chris. And how many hospitals have you contracts for at this stage?
So we've it up and running in 2 hospitals in Ireland, and we have another one set up in the UK, and we have about 5 to 6 that are going to go live in the next few weeks for contact tracing as well. So it's really starting to scale up. We have a good few hospitals that are ready to go. We can't visit them at the moment, is the problem, to install the system due to COVID and so on. So we're just working through some of the challenges on that and how we can actually get on site to fulfill those contracts. But I think it's a spanner in the works that no one has planned for, and I think it's trying to understand how to adapt and to try and, I will figure out ways to get on site and to install the system. It won't be a blocker for long.
I have no doubt, there's nobody in the cafe has any doubt that you'll figure out a way for sure. Chriskelly, just fantastic having you in the cafe. Thank you for your time this morning. We're going to go to Q&A from the floor in just a minute, and I know Karl Daly is first in the queue to ask a question. We're bringing in just a second, Karl. Before I bring Karl in, Chris, back to you. What one tip would you give your nearest and dearest? You'll get through COVID, come out in best shape by doing blah. What's the blah for Chriskelly, please?
Blah. I think in honour of the people that are doing such great service for us, I think if we can just stay socially distant and obey the kind of restrictions and so on, I think that's probably the biggest thing that we can be doing right now, is that you know, as company owners or as people, is to try and keep our staff as safe as we can and to support the frontline workers as best as we can. I think that's a really big thing we can do, and it's actually quite simple, is just make sure that we kind of do what we're supposed to do and let them get on with the delivering of the care, because, you know, we don't want to end up like Lombardy, or we don't want to have those types of challenges. I think that's probably the COVID tip for sure. That's
a lovely sentiment, yes indeed. The Bula bus all over the place today. Lovely sentiment. Thank you, Chris. Gorgeous, actually. Really nice to hear you say that. Of course, if we were all wearing Tracworx bands, we could, you know, we'd know.
All in good time, Colm. All in good time.
I can see this virtual bumper ride where we're all walking around, and all of a sudden we get shunted across because somebody's moved into our space, you know. and by the way, you know, we keep the royalties to a minimum for that idea there, Chris. Karl.
Morning, folks. How are you all doing? Chris, how are you?
I'm not too bad, Karl. How are you keeping?
Good, yeah, good. Can't complain. No, listen, I know Chris for a while. As he said himself and his buddies we do a run every month from St. Michael's Rowing Club, and Chris is taking part. It's been a while, but look, we can't do it at the moment because of the issues, so we'll have it back soon. I'll keep you posted, don't worry. Just one question I had for him in relation to his path and his career. And okay, so Chris obviously had an interest in programming and computers when he was young, but was there any moment in his life or any spark where he knew he was going to be an entrepreneurial type guy as opposed to going working for a company? So there's lots and lots of tech companies out there, you know, and if you had that interest, it probably would have been easier for you to jump into a bigger company and start plying your trade there. But was there something that kind of jumped at you to say, no, I'm going to do this myself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was less in college. I was actually got an internship after first year with Intel, and they were paying for my college and everything. It was fantastic. It was the dream company. And if I had told me at 17, 18, 19 I was going to be able to work for Intel, that would have been a huge thing for me. And and that was the dream job. And I was lucky enough that in first year, when they came to campus, I got the internship from them, which I was really excited about. And it was funny. I joined Intel, and within 3 weeks I left it because I just couldn't grasp the whole function of it or how it worked. And it was that working in a startup, you really get to terms with the problem. You're solving every issue from a high level, and you're really thinking about the problem as a whole. Instead, I found myself writing test code for a really tiny function on a small little part of a chip. And I knew at that point then I wanted to actually work on building solutions that really targeted the problem. And my mom always described it as she'd never seen me so down and for 3 weeks of my life. And, I didn't last very long, and it was a very difficult conversation to have with them after all they'd done for me. But I left that and went to America straight away and started the business. I think I knew at that point that I had no choice because I couldn't function and I wasn't happy in the job that was my so-called dream job. So I think that was definitely the defining moment where I knew I'd have to go and work for myself.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's fantastic. Look, you're definitely you're a beacon for all the young guys and the young people your age. So fair play to you and continued success.
Thank you very much, Karl. Appreciate it. We must catch up soon.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Karl. Thank you for that. Lovely sentiment. Lovely sentiment. And I know Lisa's looking to ask questions. Let me hand over to Shelley first, and Shelley will bring you in, Lisa, if that's okay. Thanks for that, Karl and Chris. Princess Shelley, in your own time.
Hey everybody, I love this part where I'm looking down through all the comments, and I mean we started off and joining us from Sweden and just said hello to everybody in the cafe this morning, and Karl just before we kicked off the interview, who we've just heard there chatting to Chris, said morning Chris and morning all, looking forward to this. So yeah, and then Karl came in then when we were talking about you with the suits and the ties, Chris. Karl said that he calls you guys the boy band. So yeah, so I think Colm alluded to that when he said the Beatles, but I think we might have more recent examples maybe than the Beatles, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's what Karl refers to you as. Then Chris, Eamon popped in all your URLs for our cafe attendees. They can access you there through various Twitter and LinkedIn and that kind of thing, and your website. So I'm sure people will access those there. So then Eamon popped in back into the chat again then, Chris, and he said some of Chris's nuggets of wisdom. So he's loving the great and really rich advice and content really that you're delivering to the cafe today. He said, he's quoting you on I started building products because I thought they were cool. Love this, do what you love, and then that goes on then to serve others. He also liked that if there's no market, it's not worth doing. Don't build anything unless it serves a problem that's worth paying for, and brand is important, be distinguishable from your competitors. So I know we all have, when we're sitting here, we have these notebooks, Chris, and if I know Eamon, yeah, we've got a few notebooks flashed there. If I know Eamon, he's been writing those down and then shared them into the chat, which again, I think is really, really valuable. I kind of highlighted here that I liked what you said, it won't be a blocker for long. So I wrote that down and put a big, I kind of liked your tenacity, and I think that's a really good reflection of your journey so far and what we can look forward to from chriskelly in the future. And I know we're all interested to know where that will go. Just before we go to Lisa, I had promised Ger has a question there for you. I'll come to you in a moment there, Lisa, and Ger has a quick question for you there. You're live, Ger.
Good morning, Chris. Great listening to your story. Just wanted to know, what advice would you give to any young person going through school at the moment with a dream to follow a path such as your own?
And good morning to you, Ger. Lovely to meet you. I suppose just to go for it. I think to some extent it's nearly the parents that might need the advice or the chat. I think that my mum was at an event with me before where Gavin Duffy was there with Orla Carmody, who would be Gavin's wife, but also general manager of his company. And I think that if it's a dream of being an entrepreneur, or if that's what you want to do, she made a very good point to my mom, and my mom has stood by it since, was that, you know, there's no difference between, the only difference between being an entrepreneur and getting a job is that your job is your customer, and you're getting a customer instead of getting a job. And I think it's a great nugget of advice that my mom always stands by, and that's one that's that got her completely on side, and it kind of made it so simple, and it made so much sense that people worry, I think, especially in Ireland, about job security, and I think people want the best for their kids, and that's a great thing, and they might want you know, that they go and get the degree, and they, you know, get the great job and the semi-D house and have the kids, and, you know, and that's great and all, but you can have that in, you know, running your own business too. And the only difference fundamentally is that you're just getting a customer instead of getting a job.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Ger. Thank you for such a great question and a really great and insightful answer, Chris. Thank you very much. And I'm now going to pop you over to Lisa. I think Lisa's got a question for you, Chris. Lisa, you're now live.
Chris, I just want to say you have absolutely made my day and blown me away. You are an incredible person. The journey you're on is fantastic. It came to mind, out of adversity comes opportunity. Your poor mother, talk about hands, knees and toes. All those injuries, but look how it's paid off. You've had direct experience, and you've given me such hope for the future. As someone who's been through the healthcare system several times and fortunately come out the other side, I totally concur with you. The staff are absolutely amazing, but the systems, the staff are amazing, but the systems that they've to deal with are just, they're not there. So I'm so emotional and so delighted with what you're doing. You are a beacon of light, a beacon of hope for all of us. Two questions, okay? You've given us such pearls of wisdom. This needs to be watched over and over by so many people, because you have wisdom beyond your years. And you know, you've just provided so many gems for business people here that really need to listen back. Two questions. Patient records. Does your Tracworx relate to patient records? Because I've been kept in hospital over weekends because unnecessarily, because they couldn't access my records. Also, my second question then would be in relation to Alzheimer's, because I've had someone very close to me get out of their surroundings, their secure surroundings, and end up in a very dangerous situation in a busy road, etc. And it is just, you know, so I'm wondering, is there anything in relation to Alzheimer's that your product tracks there as well? And sorry, I'm not being very coherent, because you just have me so emotional and so excited. I completely applaud you. I am so happy that we have you in our world, and I just wish you and your team the best of luck in the future. Thank you.
First off, Lisa, I just want to say thanks very much for that. That's very, very kind of you. I really do appreciate that. That means a lot. In terms of your questions about medical records, so we're not an EMR or an EHR, so a medical record or a health record, typically speaking. So we're not in that business, but we do integrate with them. So typically speaking, the main providers will be Epic, Cerner, some of the big players in the world in medical records. Unfortunately, they're insanely expensive right now. A typical medical record could cost an average of between 2.5 million and 5 million a year per hospital. So it's a huge budget. Considering we have 60 hospitals, it would cost about 300 to 350 million a year to kind of put in place an EMR across the country, but it is coming. There's a lot of work being done at the moment in terms of placing, I know that Deloitte being contracted in to put an electronic health record in place, but it's probably a bit away. And the biggest challenge is that, and I think they have done a lot of work in this, is that there's so much data going backwards on paper, it's just simply impossible to put all of that digital. So what the goal will be is that children now that are born, from here on forward, everything is digital. So when they get to the age of 60 and 70, when they start getting to need more care and have more chronic illnesses and so on, that they have all of the records digitalized, and that everyone from this point forward would have digital records. So it is on the way, but unfortunately I think it will be a while before it's fully operational, and I 100% agree with you. I think that it's fundamental to the running of a hospital, and to not be able to have records on site I think is crazy. I think it can be 100% achieved from a security perspective. I don't think there's any concerns there. The biggest blocker I think is just that you're dealing with a mammoth that is healthcare that has a significant amount of blockers that are going to make it very, very difficult for the adoption of new technologies. But it is coming. I know that in the bonds in Cork, for example, they have one up and running already, and it's very, very impressive how it all works. It makes our job so much easier as we can integrate with it. We can send data to the electronic health record, we can pull data from it, and send information back and forth that is as required to complete the job. In relation to your second question, there's a huge market for wander management, so I think is the term they put around it. It's something we have a product for. We haven't actually deployed it, but it's something that's a huge concern both in nursing homes and hospitals across the country to ensure the safety of patients. But it is something we definitely are looking into, and probably a market we're not focused on right now, but perhaps down the line we will expand our offering into really targeting that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for your valuable contribution to the show. Let's everybody give Lisa a big round of applause there. It really does stand true to testament that our wonderful Coffee at 11 show is all about the people who are in the cafe with us and the contributors, and thank you so much for that. And Chris, I'm going to pass you back over now. Thank you so much. Back over to our host, Colm O'Brien.
Well, Princess Shelley came into that saying this is one of her favourite parts of the show. It's also one of my favourite parts of the show because I get to sit back and have a listen to what's been going on while you and I have been having the chats, Chris. So that was just lovely, folks. Thank you indeed, Ger Lockery and Lisa, for those very insightful questions. Of course, led ably, very ably by Karl Daly. Great stuff. Chris, it's just been a pleasure having you in the cafe. I really love this because it is about getting real people in to talk about what's going on for them in front of other real people and see what we all glean from it. And Lisa, obviously, and thank you for being open and honest there, Lisa, and being somewhat emotive about the issues. Yeah, indeed, you're right, Bridget, giving Lisa a bit of bust there. But that's what it's all about. So, Chris, you know, you've stepped up to the mark one more time, young man. You're one to watch.
Appreciate that.
Sure, you're one to watch. So before we finish, let me tell you what's happening tomorrow in the cafe. We've got the husband of one of our cafe favourites to date, John McNamara, husband to the lovely Soul's Sanctuary, Sharon Colopy, is coming tomorrow. And John is a self-confessed performance nerd, high performance coach. Looking forward to having John in the cafe tomorrow. Right, Chris Kelly, thank you for being my special guest this morning in the cafe on the Coffee at 11 show. Let me thank everybody for contributing and for all the regulars for turning up every day. It's a pleasure to be able to do this and host this and have you come in and join us and enjoy it with us. I want to thank the wonderful team, Princess Shelley, for producing today's show, Eamon Smith for keeping us all safe and secure. Thank you for that. And Katrina O'Brien for later this evening making it all beautiful so we can share it across all of our platforms. And I'd like to thank wigwam.ie SME Peer Support for their ongoing support. So it just leaves me to finish the show by saying, Chris Kelly, namaste.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.